First up, though, just when you think it couldn't get any worse in terms of outrageous abuses directed at President Trump and then candidate Trump by the Obama I guess the State Department was involved too, but by the Obama administration and the deep state today, we find out and get further details on the spy that was directed at the Trump campaign and President Trump, or then candidate Trump, by the Obama FBI, Justice Department, CIA, and who knows what else. So all that escalated this week in terms of controversy and debate. It was first disclosed last week in leaks to the Washington Post and the New York Times, where you had deep staters trying to spin the efforts by the FBI and Justice Department and CIA to infiltrate the Trump campaign as just normal, when in fact it obviously wasn't normal. And what's going on now is the Justice Department and FBI are in a pitched battle with the oversight committees in Congress over documents about this spy. Now, the spy supposedly is Stephen Halper. Now, our friends over at the Daily Caller News Foundation first reported Halper's name, I think, back in March as someone who was oddly trying to connect with George Papadopoulos, that Trump advisor who had been targeted, I think pled guilty to lying, by the Mueller team. Now, Papadopoulos was actually paid by Stephen Halper to produce a piece of writing or a report of some kind. I think it was $3,000, which in typical spy craft is something that happens all the time, where you pay someone money in order to create and cement a relationship. And sure enough, Stephen Halper is reported to have met with Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, and I think Sam Clovis. Sam Clovis was a senior Trump guy. He's not in the administration now, but he was influential within the Trump campaign. Now, what was the pretext for doing so? Those are the questions that are outstanding. Who was behind this spy operation? Those are the questions that are outstanding. Now, I've been calling it Spygate. President Trump's been calling it Spygate. And outrageously, the liberal media are pretending that this spy wasn't a spy. They're calling him an informant. They're calling him a human confidential informant, things like that don't make any sense. This person was not someone who was on the campaign, who was providing information to Trump, to the FBI, which is what maybe a typical informant might be. This is someone who evidently was designated and sent out by the FBI to go after the Trump people and gain information, the very definition of spying. And the reaction of the Obama gang to this is really interesting, because what they've done this week is they've confirmed generally that this took place, but they said it was all by the rules and by the book, which is exactly the same type of language that Susan Rice used to describe President Obama's Oval Office meeting back in January of 2017, where they discussed the dossier and going out and confronting Trump with the dossier, I don't know, to intimidate him or to, I think, to extort him into keeping Comey on as FBI director. That's how I interpreted it. And in order to protect also the deep state in terms of preventing Trump from doing anything significant, because it would be, the threat would be that maybe this stuff will leak. That's how I interpreted all that. And of course, President Obama was involved in that Oval Office meeting. And Susan Rice, after the fact, weeks afterwards, wrote that Obama's orders were to do everything by the book. You know what? Just when you do something wrong and then you say later, do it by the book and follow all the rules in doing something wrong, it doesn't justify the original activity. And there is no reasonable way that the United States government could have conducted a counterintelligence investigation or spy operation against a presidential campaign based on the publicly available evidence we have, which is zilch. There was no information warranting this type of effort to plant a spy on the Trump team. And we're assuming we know everything. that there was only one guy they were using to try to infiltrate the Trump campaign. And it looks like Mr. Mueller benefited, excuse me, benefited from this spy operation, because the reports are he communicated with the Mueller team after Mueller came on board, which tells you why the Justice Department and the FBI don't want to provide documents to Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy and the folks in the Senate about what was going on, because I think they recognize the Mueller operation, its credibility can't take more hits. And what happened this week is interesting, because the president directed the Justice Department and the FBI, you need to start ponying up records to Congress. And they're stringing along the president, they're stringing along Congress. And how do you know that happened? Because they, quote, had a meeting about it this week with the congressional leaders on the Republican side who wanted information. And then there was a second meeting that involved the so-called Gang of Eight, which includes the leadership of Congress on the Democrat and Republican side, and the leadership of the intelligence committees on the Senate and House side as well. My guess is no documents were turned over. Indeed, that's what the reporting is. My guess is the meeting consisted of the FBI and DOJ. Supposedly Rosenstein was there. Mr. Wray, the director, was there, and Senator Coates, who's the Office of Director of National Intelligence, was there. My guess is they told them they did everything by the book. We need to see the documents on Spygate. The president needs to step in and order the Justice Department to declassify and release publicly these records. They're stonewalling Congress. They're stonewalling Judicial Watch. And it's all about protecting themselves from potential criminal and civil liability. You have Clapper out there saying, the former Office Director of National Intelligence head under President Obama, saying he thought it was a good thing that there was spying going on in the Trump campaign. And then he said, well, no, they weren't really spies. And then he said, well, no, they were just spying on the Russians. No, they were spying on the Trump campaign. Then you had James Comey, who's an anti-Trumper, issue a statement through Twitter: "Facts matter. The FBI's use of confidential human sources," the actual term, "is tightly regulated and essential to protecting the country. Attacks on the FBI and lying about its work will do lasting damage to our country. How will Republicans explain this to their grandchildren?" Well, my guess is honest Americans will explain to their grandchildren that people like James Comey, when called out on misconduct, attacked those who were calling him out on misconduct. And when you have government officials like James Comey say that it's not a spy, that it's a human confidential source, without explaining exactly why they thought they had the right to go into the Trump campaign the way they did. And remember, this is only one aspect of what was going on. They were unmasking individuals by using foreign intelligence surveillance. They were taking up the phone records of the Trump campaign through national security letters. So they got the phone records of the Trump campaign as well, all based on the specious allegations that there were perhaps advisors on the Trump team who may have had connections to the Russians. And it bears repeating, by that standard, the Clinton campaign probably should have had an FBI squad ensconced in their campaign headquarters, given all the connections the Clinton gang had to the Russians. The campaign chair, John Podesta, was a business partner through a company in Massachusetts with the Russians. Hillary herself was receiving money personally while Secretary of State through her husband's speaking fees from Russia fund companies. And the FBI and the DOJ all knew that the Russians were sending tens of millions of dollars into the Clinton Foundation and other Clinton-connected entities, all in an effort to influence Hillary Clinton's decision-making on the Uranium One matter. Yet they chose to spy on Donald Trump because Carter Page, who was an informant for the FBI, how will I know that? Because he's been saying it publicly. He would brief the FBI on his trips to Russia. They knew what he was about. This was pretextual, excuse-making to generate this operation, this counterintelligence operation, which again was handed off directly to Mueller. So what Mueller's doing now is he's pursuing the counterintelligence investigation that included illegal spying, wiretapping, the FISA court abuse, the Clinton DNC dossier, unmaskings, we don't know, other FISA court applications and FISA warrants, we don't know, these national security letters. And on top of that, Mueller's done all sorts of other abuses with the raids on the lawyers' offices, the raid on Manafort's home, taking emails he didn't have the right to from the Trump transition. So what to do? The president needs to tell the Justice Department and the FBI to declassify everything. And if Mueller's getting in the way, his fraud investigation, meaning he's not investigating fraud, meaning the basis of it is based on a fraud, is getting in the way of disclosure about this major scandal that has few comparisons in American history, if any at all, shut the Mueller operation down.